Hello, everyone. Angelo here, Hollywood filmmaker, greatest screenwriter in the history of the world, recovering hobo. I did it. I finally did it. I pushed my landlord out of town, and I didn't let them come back. I stood up to him. I say, "You cannot come back here." LA is in great shape now. It's improving every day in a lot of ways, a lot of interesting ways. Starting to sound like a former president. And you can do this too. It's really simple. Talk to your roommates. Talk to all 7 or 8 of them. I swear I knew a guy in DC who had like 8 or 9 roommates in, where was it? Southwest DC, kind of by Georgetown, I believe, in a house. And at one point he let me know I could move there and I would be paying $700 a month in rent. Or I could just stay with my parents. So, yeah, I stayed with my parents. You can talk to your roommates, talk to your fellow tenants, build some solidarity, talk about your problems. There's such strength in sharing your problems with others, not just telling your problems to others, listening to others' problems. Ask them, how's it going with the rent? What's it like dealing with the landlord? I don't even have to ask much of anything a lot of times. People will just say, like, problems with them when you just ask them, because that's what's on their mind. And it's like, well, if we have these problems, why don't we work on solutions? Get rid of the landlords. Like, we have the building here. The landlord's not providing this every day. It's not something like a bouncy castle they inflate every day and we walk into. It's just there. The landlord just kind of creeps in between like a big old creep and separates you from the housing bit. And it's like, oh, you want it? You want it? Here, sign this lease, pay 2 months rent up front, pay a deposit up front, pay to turn on utilities, get locked into a 1 or 2 or 5 year lease, and when your lease is up, we're going to increase your rent by 30%. There you go. If you don't like it, go leave. And I'm going to rely on all these bootlickers online and on YouTube who think one day they'll be rich too, and just who get a sense of exhilaration from identifying with a class of people, a class of people who just make our lives worse, in the hopes, in the futile belief, in the desire that one day, like, you'll be in that position, and somehow it's like a purifying thing. It's this great rite of passage to become an owner, that puts people in poverty, that puts them in debt. They go to jobs where they're paid poverty wages. They come home to a miserable household. Landlord doesn't keep the building up to code. I wonder how many buildings in LA, if you want, people to follow the law. I love hearing these whinging, whining, blowhard white conservatives saying, you gotta follow the law. People who follow the law tend not to have problems with the law. What you would find if housing inspectors actually went through every building in LA, every house, every dwelling, and determined if the landlords are keeping them up to code. What would you find? You'd find a lot bigger stuff than just, oh, there's cracks, there's black mold, there's water leaks, there's rot in the walls. You'd find stuff like it's not ADA compliant, or whichever regulations require that you have wheelchair access in a building. People with mobility issues need to be able to get housing. And by the way, disability, it's so degrading. Like, it pays you like the bare minimum. You got to go through so much work to get disability payments, and then if you're ever like able to show in any way you can actually work, like, you're at risk for losing those payments. but you're not paid very much at all. It's not really enough to live. So you talk to people, you take ownership of, you know, the idea of mutual aid, of helping each other, of reaching out and saying, we're not going to rely on like a corporate job to help us. Not going to rely on, you know, that's most of it, right? Most of where, you know, our help comes from is you get a job. Well, the job's at a corporation. The corporation has executives you'll never see. They don't face you. It has a lot of times shareholders who they're beholden to make profits for. They're not making profits for you. You're making profits for them. And then, you know, these bloated white conservatives are,
Well, well, that's the problem with your mindset. You don't want to be rich. You don't want to work hard. See? See, people are just bitter
because they don't want to work for the money. We're working for executives' money. We're working for their fucking vacations and summer homes and bonuses, their stock options, the lobbyists they send to their city councils and governors and mayors and Congress and the White House, and you know, all that revolving door stuff of you work in an industry, you leave the industry to be a lobbyist, and then you go lobby, you go consult with the government, letting, you know, letting, I was going to say letting them know, that's way too kind a phrase. Really pressing them on the need of, look, this industry can't survive if we're forced to pay a 0.5% tax on all dividends. It just can't survive. That doesn't make sense. Anyways, so how's everybody doing? Everybody should start networks here. This will be the start of it. The mutual aid, a worldwide mutual aid society, right here. Connect with people. Share your problems. For me, it's realizing, you know, it's very important for me to generate activity, like do lots of work, be active, to be well. But it's also degrading to know, like, you know, I'm working so hard to make someone else rich. And that's by design. It's not an accident. And it's not just me. Like, there's nothing special about my situation, except that I'm fairly lucky to be in the circumstances I am, where one, I have my health, never take that for granted. Where two, I have a stable place to live, even with the, you know, bugs and not insects, but like, you know, quirks and features of it. Not much to complain about regarding that. And I live in a great part of LA where, you know, so much of what I want is within walking distance, or I can get on the metro or take a bus and get to where I want. I can go to Hollywood Boulevard. I'm in such a, you know, to me, this is where my dreams come from. This is one of the most famous neighborhoods in the world. And the fact that my expenses are relatively low. For LA, I look at my groceries, I'm like, this is nuts. There's got to be cheaper ways to get groceries. I'm paying probably around $130, $140 a week, if not more, on groceries. And I'm getting strictly like what fits within my meal plan. That's counting that part. I do spend extra on, like, you know, cheap meals here and there. Whatever, desserts, pastries. But even, like I said, even that, it's just every week I pretty much know the same thing to order. Uh, well, to buy. I do order on Instacart now, and I leave good tips. Leave those drivers those delivery people good tips. Man, they are helping us out. I always leave, like, I forget the percentage, but it's around, like, for like $100 order, like an $18 tip. Sorry, enjoying my coffee. But, you know, things are good. Like, I'm pushing. I'm doing my writing. It's funny. Last night I had such trouble sleeping. I had such vivid nightmares, and I think that was induced by my muscles burning in my legs. When I do like intense leg workouts, and especially if I'm, pushing myself beyond where my exercise plan has me at, because you got to be able to recover from your workouts, and like my legs burn, it just wakes me up throughout the night. And that's what happened last night. I found a bunch of old car cleaning supplies and some like 2 bottles of motor oil that I had in my room from when I had a car, and I was like, oh, I got to get rid of this stuff. So I gave the cleaning supplies to my roommate. I only have one roommate who has a car. He bought one a little while ago, so just gave those to him. But the oil, I don't know what kind of oil he uses. I don't even know if he knows. I wasn't trying to find out. I was like, I'll just go recycle it. And so I rode my bike to Advanced Auto Parts or whatever, and I dropped it off there to recycle. But that bike ride, a mile and a half or so, a little bit intense, but coming off a week of cycling to work, yeah, it was a lot. So, and I haven't eaten much more as a result. So it's like, oh, I really get it's a relationship with food that I have where it's giving me nutrition, helping me recover. It's not just like, oh, eat and maybe you'll lose weight with this meal, maybe you'll gain it. It's like, no, it's a relationship. It's ongoing. It encompasses a long period of time. Anyways, my screenwriting, just working so much at that. It's great. I love doing it. With all the stress I've had, it's the most uplifting thing. I only want to do more of it. I only want more time to do it. And also, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking, okay, eventually I want to write a movie. Because I'm doing screenwriting assignments for my classes. So they're not like my actual personal screenplay. They're little exercises that we're doing like every day. So I don't really have time to work on my own screenplay. And plus, I want to build up my skills in this. It's like, for me, an analogy is if you're like training for a boxing match, you may be eager to fight, but you wouldn't just say, oh, let's stop the training, I'm just going to go fight. Like, you wouldn't do that. You would want to get the most training in possible, the smartest training, the best recovery, the best methods, the best psychology, so you're fit and ready and sharp for the fight. You don't want to, go and be like, oh, well, I just want to do the fight now. I love boxing. Or whatever it is, whatever sport. So that's kind of my attitude. So I'm still going to be in writing classes probably about another year. And already I'm thinking, but in my mind, I'm dreaming like about my films that I want to write. I have certain stories I want to write. A lot of them informed by my life and, experiences being homeless, being a bouncer, being a writer, um, dark times. And I'm like, I can feel it sometimes. I'm like tingling. I'm looking up stuff about low budget filmmaking. And I've made plenty of like, my own little small productions and shorts and stuff and little web series. But I really want to stretch every dollar and also make sure everyone's treated well and paid well and all that. And make sure I have like a plan to get the movie distributed and actually get it seen. I don't want to just, have no business plan for it and be like, well, I made a great film, now someone will want it, right? Like, actually think it through all the way and edit it myself, do the sound editing, do the coloring myself. Why? Well, for one thing, it's sort of like artistic integrity to me, I guess. It's like, if it's my movie, no one's going to care about it as much as me. And the other thing is, you can hire those people, but they cost a fortune. If they're really good at what they do and if they care about it as much as I do, they cost a fortune. So it's all consumer tools now. You can buy it. Some of that stuff, a lot of that stuff is free. So I want it to be like an experiment. Like, I want to document the whole process of making the movie and what model works for it, and figure out how can I replicate it and scale it up if I have to for something that requires a bigger budget that you just can't get around. But I know, one, I mostly want to shoot in found locations in the street. I don't want to build sets. I don't want to have to pay for locations if we don't need them. Just figure out a way to design a story that takes place in found places with a very minimal crew, a small cast, dedicated cast. And I'm going to get there and figure out how to do things like, now that I'm this, transportation nut, like, how do we reduce our, physical footprint as far as the least cars arriving on set? How do I get everyone to carpool? Do I get everyone to stay in one location in a hotel or Airbnb or whatever, and we all just get in a van and go somewhere? There are downsides to that too. If someone's got to leave, now you got to, at best you can get an Uber or something. And not a horrible option, but for every reason, I want to avoid waste. So I know all of this daily intake, it's like a diet, this daily process. It's like, if you were viewing it as a diet for like some kind of bodybuilding competition, who's gonna look better in a year? The person who every day is ingesting the stuff they need, or not even just eating the stuff you need, it's doing the research on diet, because as your body changes, it adjusts to your diet. Like, you want to be up to date on the best science, the best practices. You want to be measuring how your body's responding to your diet. That's how I'm viewing this, is like understanding, how do people make low budget movies, how have people I've worked with made low budget movies. What are the pitfalls, what are the what are the things to know to get the best result from that. How can you improve it even more? And so by the time I get to a set, it's like, oh, I've already been preparing for this for well over a year. And I want to shoot a lot of movies in Virginia, where I'm from, because a lot of these, first of all, I know the locations in Virginia, a lot of them. There's a lot I don't know about Virginia, but Northern Virginia especially, I know a lot of the locations. You could go anywhere and find places. That's not necessarily an issue, but it's like, spend an extra few months scouting locations, or just write a script, have in the back of my mind stuff in Virginia, and try and work out from there, where I could shoot stuff and who I'd reach out to, because at least I already know so many places, and I'm familiar with just sort of the movement around places and the traffic patterns, and where places just may seem like they're not going to be friendly to filmmakers, and places that might be. Also, Virginia is going to be a lot cheaper than shooting in LA. And it's, like I said, Virginia stories. So I want it to look like Virginia. I want it to feel like it. It could probably be done lots of places in California, but again, I'd have to go scouting. And part of that too is reaching out to people, not asking for favors. If you want to know my thoughts on networking, is don't network in a way. Circumvent the networking by just being a friend. Initiate contact. Don't even ask for someone's contact info if you're not sure. If you meet someone, especially say if they're very wealthy, they could be a financier of your film. At the end of the night, whatever, if it's an event or something, say, hey, nice meeting you. I heard there's going to be this other thing. Are you going to be there? And try and meet them at the next thing. Now you're a more familiar face, and then be at the next one. And so now you're someone who shows up, who has follow through, who's friendly, who's not begging for favors. And then you can, make some kind of ask, or say, let them know, like, oh, I'm working on this or whatever. If they're interested, they'll let you know, especially if a rich person who likes to play with their money and want to be involved in film and they want their name on a movie. These are stories I've heard. I've never personally done that. I met lots of people, but I was always trying to ask for contact info, asked to get on sets. It pretty much only worked out once. It was a really good experience. Maybe more than that, I can't remember. But for the most part, it's like, oh, better to just make friends. And, when it's your turn to sort of, go out and make something, then ask people for their advice. Ask them, like, what's the hardest things you've encountered working on a film, on post-production, on set, whatever? What are the biggest surprises you encountered, the biggest challenges? Take all that stuff in. So now you're not just like trading on luck, like, oh, we're going to be lucky, I'm a hardworking filmmaker, I'm up and coming, I'm going to do this. Now you're like, you've built this library of people and wisdom that you can take with you to your set. So yeah, when you arrive on set, it looks like you just spent a few weeks or a few months preparing this. In reality, you've been preparing what? A year, 5 years, 10 years. So that's what I'm trying to do. Be open and remember, that's my goal. That's the direction I'm going. It's not serving my corporate owners. It's not serving the landlord. It's not just drearily getting through the day. It's trying to thrive, trying to survive, and figure out, how do I model this thing I'm talking about, this idea of, mutual aid, the workers owning the workplace. How do I work that into a film? Part of it, just speak it, ask it, put it out in the world and see what your unconscious mind works on. So I'm thinking like, okay, give, everybody on the crew and the actors percentage of the movie's profits, and how do you make sure it's profitable, and how do you do all these things where you can save money? I'm thinking like, buy a small camera, buy a cheap camera, buy a quality camera, but one is not going to take a ton of hard drive space to store stuff on, because then you got to store footage on, because then you got to buy a ton of hard drives. So on and on. It's like, well, do you need the pinnacle of picture, or can you take a little drop in the picture that 99% of people will never ever notice, and get a huge savings, and spend that money on the screen and on the people, and also spend that money on time working on your script? What good is a fucking great camera if you don't have a great script? Like, erase the camera, shoot it on a cell phone, put the time into another, few months on the script, but it's not even time on the script. Learn how to write. Ask yourself, why are you writing this? Why this scene? Why this character? Why this moment? Why would the audience be engaged? If this is something that happened to you, this story you're trying to get across to the audience, why will the audience be interested? Why does it need to be a certain way? Does it need to be just what happened to you, or can you heighten it to make it even better than what happened to you, to convey that emotion, to get it across to someone else who's not you, who didn't have that personal interest in it? And that's what I've been thinking, and I've struggled so much with that in my own stories, and I'm just coming up with more options for that, for how do I want to do it. Questions that have been nagging me, that I've been stuck about so long, and I'm like, I have to forget my preconceived notions and just go for this thing. That, like, okay, if I'm going to ask myself, how do I make it harder for the character to achieve a certain goal? How do I make it impossible for them? And then you'll be left wondering, well, how are they going to do this? It's impossible. They cannot do this. And don't cop out on that. Don't cop out to yourself like, well, it's going to be hard, or that's not really how it happened. Listen to the patterns of how other screenwriters talk, and when they have the same problems and encounter the same challenges, figure out, okay, we didn't all get together and agree to, encounter the same challenges, so what do I have to do that's different to overcome those? Well, I have to apply myself even more with greater rigor to writing. So that's what I'm doing. I was burning up in bed today with my muscles, my mind's burning, my stomach's burning, because I've not been eating much and I've been exercising so hard, pushing myself to the limit. Let me know what you all think. Let me know your problems. I want this to be a good community, a positive community. Let me know something good that's happened to you or that you've done lately. And it's keep it clean, but keep things, try and get, so for realistically, for a lot of people, it's going to be more on the problem side. What problems have you been having? Because a lot of people are going through big ones. So you never know what, can come of just speaking your problems and reaching out and hearing back from others, what they think and their problems too. Because you can build communities with that, and you build strength with that, and you realize, oh, there's a better way than just working for a corporation, paying a corporation to live, paying the corporation for your food, paying a corporation for your clothes, etc. Like, let's figure out ways to support each other. People power, not corporate power. All right. I know that sounds kind of corny, but the older I get, the more I realize, oh man, that is like, it's just so important. All right, everyone, let me know what you think.